Coming up in this week's Torah Pearls.
Hey, chapter 25, verse 19 just breaks off mid-sentence. Where does it pick back up?
Which sources are attributed to chapter 25? And how does Richard Elliott Freeman and Joel Baden differ?
Pinchas is ranked third in one ancient source. Third in what?
Who exactly died in the wilderness? Was it the whole generation? Was it the men of war? Or was it the men of the rebellion?
All right, Jono, let's jump into this thing.
Let's start. G'day, dear viewers, and thank you for your company once again here on truth2u.org. That's truth number 2 letter u.org. I'm Jono Vandor, and joining me from the HOREB Institute in Louisiana is the author of the Moses Scroll, Ross K. Nichols. G'day, mate.
Hello, Jono. How are you, my friend?
Going all right. Doing fine. We find ourselves in, what is this, Pinchas? Or Pinchas? Pinchas.
Pinchas.
It'll be interesting to see.
Ezra called it Pinchas, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Ezra pronounces this. But of course, we are in season 3 of Torah Pearls, brought to you by Tanakh Tours, and we are aiming at 2026. More information coming soon. But this week we're in Torah portion Pinchas. Ezra, our AI critical scholar, is with us. Ezra, maybe you can give us a academic summary.
Torah portion, Pinchas, picks up right after the violent zealotry of Pinchas, who spears an Israelite man and Midianite woman during a plague-inducing incident. He's then granted a covenant of peace, which is a bit ironic given the violence, and elevated to priestly status, though he wasn't originally eligible. Then we get a census, second one in the wilderness, which seems administrative, but it sets the stage for land allotment in Canaan. That leads us to the daughters of Zelophehad, who challenge the male-only inheritance norms. Their request is upheld, and it's a critical moment showing how legal flexibility works within the Torah's framework. Moses is also told he won't enter the land, and Joshua is appointed as his successor. That's a major leadership transition. The portion closes with an extended detailing of the daily and festival offerings, a liturgical calendar that roots Israel's worship in sacred time, not just sacred space. From a documentary perspective, you can see the priestly source's fingerprints all over this portion. Obsession with lineage, cultic regulation, and centralized authority. It's theology through bureaucracy, but deeply intentional.
Deeply intentional? How intentional, I wonder? Well, I suppose it is intentional, the arrangement. We're going to be talking about that.
Right.
What Ezra refers to as a plague-inducing incident, quite right. I feel it would be best if we just do a little bit of recapping at the end of our last Torah portion, the beginning of chapter 25. I'm going to be looking at that. And Ezra, the covenant of peace, little bit ironic, isn't it? Ironic, Ross? Don't you think?
Isn't it ironic?
Just a little bit.
Is that
given the
Morissette?
violence, Alanis Morissette. Given the violence involved, quite right. So we're going to be talking about that.
Hey, before we do that recap, can I just give? I found this reference. Are you familiar with Sirach?
Not really. Tell me about that.
Let me just. I was looking for ancient references to Pinchas, and and this is one that it gave me, and those I've advised or I've encouraged people if they want a good all around academic Bible with the Hebrew Bible, Deuterocanonical books, and the New Testament to pick up this New Oxford Annotated, and here's what it says in Sirach. Yeah. And so this is chapter 45, verse 23 and following. Pinchas, son of Eleazar, ranks third in glory for being zealous in the fear of the Lord, Jono, and standing firm when the people turned away. In the noble courage of his soul, and he made atonement for Israel. Therefore, a covenant of friendship, it says, was established with him, that he should be leader of the sanctuary and of his people, that he and his descendants should have the dignity of the priesthood forever. Just as a covenant was established with David, son of Jesse of the tribe of Judah, that the king's heritage passes only from son to son, so the heritage of Aaron is for his descendants alone. Underline, exclamation point.
Let me just pick you up on something there. What verse did you start in?
23, verse 23.
Oh, so he is. What does it mean that it says that he's third in glory? How do you understand that?
Well, I think it backs up. In other words, if you back it up, you've got to go back to Moses in chapter 45, verse 1. He must be first in glory, was a beloved by God and people, Moses, whose memory is blessed. He made him equal in glory to the holy ones, blah, 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 etc. And then you go down to verse 6, and he exalted Aaron, a holy man like Moses. And so then the third in glory is Pinchas, yeah.
So
Pinchas.
Eleazar doesn't get a... Oh, hang on. Yeah, Pinchas, son of Eleazar, ranks third. Well, how about that?
Just skipped right over him.
Just skip. That's
yeah,
a little bit.
It's really kind of an interesting. By that time, obviously, there is a certain established, I guess, criteria. Who's in the top three? And at this time, when this must have been put out, it was there. You
Holy
go,
Trinity. There you go. So Moses, Aaron, and
top
Pinchas.
Three. There you go.
That's where we are. So listen, to recap, because we have to, because chapter 25 sort of brings us. What is this this plague-inducing incident? We did touch on it at the end of our last Torah portion, but there's a couple of things, Ross, that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm not so sure. You can help me about Richard Elliott Friedman's claim that it is all the priestly material. Let me read here.
Yeah, you do that.
All right, here we go.
What are you reading? What are you reading?
I'm looking at your Torah tablet here.
Okay.
And it is chapter 25. So Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab. They called to the people, Moabite women called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and all the people did eat, and they bowed down to their gods. And Israel joined himself to Baal Peor, and the anger of Jehovah was kindled against Israel. And Jehovah said to Moses, here's my point, right? Now take all the chiefs, I want everyone to follow the progress of this. Take all the chiefs of the people, right, the tribal heads, if you like, and hang them up, that means impale them before Jehovah, right, before the sun, that the fierce anger of Jehovah may turn away from Israel. Okay, this is going to be the remedy. Kind of gruesome, right? A little bit violent, isn't it? I mean, a
little bit. I can feel the covenant of peace is coming, but keep going. We're not there yet.
Now, we have to assume, the assumption here is that the heads of the tribes are guilty in bowing down to Baal Peor or joining whatever it is, the incident. They must be. We have to assume that.
Right.
And Moses said, now Moses decides, you know what, I'm not so sure about that. I'm going to do this instead. Now listen to what he does. Moses said to the judges of Israel, slay every one his men that have joined themselves to Baal Peor. Now, the assumption is, if you're not reading too closely, Ross, that these are one and the same, that the tribal chiefs and every one of the men that have joined themselves to Baal Peor are one and the same. Slay them how? By impaling them, or slay with a sword, as the Levites did? Now, this is very reminiscent, by the way, of what the Levites supposedly did after the golden calf incident. Both of these are incidents where Moses instructs Israelites to slay their brothers, which is directly against the commandment to not kill the soul of your brother. What is that? Number 4 on the Moses scroll, right? Commandment number 4, do not kill the soul of your brother. But here we have Moses telling them to do exactly that, despite what Jehovah apparently told him to do, which was to take all the heads of the tribes and hang them, impale them before the Lord, that the Lord's wrath may turn away. Verse 6, and behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation. And the children of Israel, while they were weeping at the door of the tent of meeting, and Pinchas, man of the hour, third in line of glory, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it, and he rose up from the midst of the congregation. He took a spear in his hand, and he went after the man of Israel into the pavilion, and he thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman, through her body. So the plague was stayed. Now we have a plague that we don't read about previously. We talked about that last week. And the plague was stayed from the children of Israel. Now, here's the thing. The remedy, Ross, what we're to understand, the remedy to avert Jehovah's fierce anger burning against them is to impale the chiefs. That's not done. Instead, Moses says to everyone, like he did the Levites, take a sword. He doesn't say take a sword, but he says, slay ye everyone that join themselves to Baal Peor.
Unless, as you point out, we're supposed to assume that those two were the same groups. Okay.
That's right.
All right, I'm ready.
And even though that is apparently done, right, we find that those who died in a plague was 24,000, Ross.
Yeah.
24,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't seem to make sense to me. But now you're going to be able to make sense of this, but I'm just going to highlight Baden's take on this, Joel Baden, in chapter 25. He says, and Israel abode in Shittim. He's got, that's E. And the people began to commit whoredom, and this is then J. Back to E in verse 3, Israel joined himself to Baal Peor. And then we're back to J until we get to verse 5. We're back to E. And Moses said to the judges of Israel, slay ye every one of the men that joined himself to Baal Peor. So if I was to read all of E, it would say, and Israel abode in Shittim, and Israel joined himself to Baal Peor. And Moses said to the judges of Israel, slay every man that was joined to Baal Peor. Then we switch back to P from verse 6, 7, and 8 until the end of 8, where it says, so the plague was stayed from the children of Israel, and those that died in the plague were 24,000. He's attributing to the redactor. We're going to be talking more about the redactor later on in this Torah portion, but we have a little bit of everyone. Now, what does Richard Elliott Freeman have? And solve this for me.
Hey, this is, well, I don't know if I can solve it. I can at least give another scholarly position, and that's the fun for me, and I think you and I have both said that we're enjoying the study because it really is, it gives us different options. So here's what Richard Elliott Friedman does with this. If you look at 25, it begins in J in verse 1, and he says verses 1 through 5 are all J, and then he puts verse 6 as P, the beginning of a priestly text. Now,
and he and Baden agree there. So 6, 7, 8 he's got as P, yeah.
Okay, now the reason this is interesting to me is that if you follow Friedman's logic, you don't have to agree with the documentary hypothesis or with Friedman, but what's interesting is that if you're looking at P, the last time we see P is in chapter 20, verses 23 through 29. And so this is the end of P, and here's the way it ends, just so you kind of get a feel for this. By the way, people that have the Torah tablets on page 158. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they wept for Aaron 30 days, even all the house of Israel. So we leave in P, we leave off with the congregation weeping. And then you have all sorts of stuff. Chapter 21, we know we went through all this. The story of Balak and Balaam, which we talked about all the way through. Okay, then you pick up the people were weeping as P ended in chapter 20. And listen to this, verse 6. And behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel while they were weeping at the door of the tent of meeting. So his point, listen, here's the way he puts it, Jono. This is Friedman. Now I'm reading from the Bible with Sources Revealed on page 288. Here's what he says. I found this to be, if not convincing, at least it establishes why he says what he says. Okay. Why are the people mourning? The last verse of P before this was Numbers 20, verse 29. The conclusion of the account of Aaron's death, it says, all the congregation saw that Aaron had expired, and all the house of Israel mourned Aaron 30 days. After a 4-chapter hiatus, P now continues where it left off. All the children of Israel were mourning. And he goes just one more point, because you read through verse 9, which talks about, or you mentioned the plague, 24,000.
Yeah, what does he got?
So, all right, so what he says is, this also explains why there is a plague that has seemingly come from nowhere. P says earlier that a plague came if the people came too close to the holy zone of the tent of meeting. So there'll not be, quote, a plague in the children of Israel when the children of Israel would come near to the holy. He puts that all the way back in P in Numbers chapter 8, that if there's a violation, this is his logic, right?
Yeah.
So that was his point. So we've got this interesting, as you pointed out, Baden, who is one of the top scholars in the field today, as a younger scholar, has got some differences. What sometimes one calls J, the other calls E.
Yeah, and that's really where most of the differences come for.
That's right.
Between these two, but they all seem to agree on P. So what you're saying about P seems to ring true with Baden as well. There's a couple of sentences, but
That's
primarily
right.
the big chunk is chapter 20, as you quite point out. Aaron has just died and the people are still weeping. Totally by that. That is fine. The interesting thing about this is that, of course, the Moses scroll tells us otherwise. I understand why Richard Elliott Freeman would connect the plague with them being too close to the tabernacle, if that's what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and in this case, committing a grave offense at the in the holy zone. Yeah,
which is one of the reasons why Nadab and Abihu. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Right.
But I can see how he makes that connection, and that's a fair connection to make. We know from the Moses scroll that it suggests something different. It says that as a result of the interaction with the Midianites and the Moabites, that a plague broke forth, and that plague was stayed by the Israelites battling the Midianites. And so it is interesting. But what seems to ring true for me with Baden is that he separates the command to impale all the heads of the tribes from.
I see that.
From Moses saying, so slay everyone who's joined to Baal Peor.
Well, now, let me stop you just for a moment, because just to make sure people followed your thinking there, and exactly what you're showing is that Baden sees, it sounds like we've got two different stories merged. One says, impale the leaders before the sun, and then another story, another version with Moses in the third person, seems to suggest that there's another method of remedy against this, and it's go out and slay them, as you pointed out. How do you slay someone? It sounds sort of like the story after the golden calf, like you pointed out, with the sword. You kill them. And we know, by the way, one more point on the slaying with the sword and tying all this to Pinchas, we're going to pick up in Numbers 31 in next week's Torah portion, that this very killing with the sword kind of carries on out into the field, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it is, we're going to be talking about that. It's strange. We're cut short in the middle of the narrative. It does pick up again in chapter 31. And it's almost, we have this sewn into the middle, this interruption of the whole event. But nevertheless, we entering our Torah portion now. Chapter 25, verse 11 is where we are. Ross, and it begins like this. Yeah.
Wait, one second. Let me jump in and say one thing, because even though you're going to pick it up in verse 11, let me just say that there seems to be this plague. The mention of the plague is in verse 9. Those that died by the plague were 24,000.
24,000.
Okay,
yeah.
And then there's a white space. And then it gives us a little bit more information about other things, and it goes to verse 19, which breaks off, which we're going to talk about in a few moments, an incomplete sentence. It says, and it came to pass after the plague. And then there's a major break in the text, and people say, let me make this point. They automatically just read the next verse. Jehovah spake unto Moses and unto Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saying, take the sum of the congregation. But in the Hebrew, there's a major break.
Yeah.
So it goes from verse 9, there's this
That's
plague, kills 24,000. Verse 19 to the plague. All right, now let's pick up the middle ground between there like you were about to do. Sorry.
And before I do that, let me just remind everybody that I think and I'm just off the top of my head, I think it's Psalm 106, verse 28, I think that does concur with the Moses Scroll that says
I've got
that
it
they
open.
provoked. Oh, okay. Just remind me what it says.
Psalm 106.
106, is it 28?
28. And then they attached themselves to the Baal of Peor, ate sacrifices offered to the dead. They provoked the Lord to anger with their deeds, and a plague broke out among them. And then Pinchas stood up and interceded. He interceded, all right. And the plague was stopped. And that has been reckoned to him as righteousness, from generation unto generation forever.
Yeah.
So did he intercede for him, or did he whack him in half with a sword?
Well, he as I've said before, he's shish kebabbed them. But
it was bad.
But my point is that Psalm 106 is saying it was the Baal Peor incident that caused the anger of the Lord, and therefore a plague broke out, contrary to what Richard Elliott Freeman is suggesting. So, all right, so there's some homework for the for the viewers. And if you have an opinion on it, put it in the comments. We would love to read that.
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, hath turned my wrath away from the children of Israel, in that he was zealous with... Look, how about this? How about God says to Moses, go and impale all of those guys, the chieftains of the... Go and do that. And then my wrath will turn away. And Moses says, I don't know about that. What if we just go and, knock off everyone who was guilty, get everyone. And then therefore a plague breaks out. But then Pinchas goes, no, you know what? Here's a chieftain. I'm going to go and impale him. And that acts, God is like, yeah, now I'm appeased. That's good. Well done. I don't know. I don't know. It's just doing that. But here's a curious thing, Ross. It goes on to say, for he was jealous with my jealousy among them, so that I consumed not the children of Israel in my jealousy. Now, that's another question that I have, Ross.
Oh, man.
All these other incidents where they've stepped out of line, God has just gone to Moses and Aaron, get out of my way because I'm going to eat them. I'm going to, lightning's going to shoot, fire's going to shoot out.
Going to consume them. Yeah.
Going to consume them. And he seems to have no problem with that. And he's done that before where thousands have died, or a plague has broken out or something. But here, it's that he needs them to go and impale certain people, and he himself is not acting directly. Or is he? Because there's also a plague. It seems to me to be very inconsistent.
24,000 died in the plague. That's a lot of people. So maybe by the end of that 24,000,
I don't know. Yeah, maybe it was, I don't know. So here it is. But here's a word that's interesting, jealousy. Now, we do have that word actually in the Moses Scroll. Kana, I think, is the root word. I
believe that's it.
And akna, it appears in the seventh commandment.
But by the way, I was just going to say if we do a study, and you and I have done a study on this, probably when we did the 10 Commandments, the 10 words study, but kana does come out to mean at its root sort of like passionate, so that you get jealous. Some translations say zealous.
Protective. Or zealous,
some say jealous. Which is a
good way to say it. Yeah.
And that's because somebody theological
you have something
theological
to protect.
Thinking. Well, high theology won't allow someone to say, well, God's above jealousy. I don't want my God to be jealous, so we like to say zealous. It sounds better. But really, it's the same Hebrew word. The English word is just changed to try to make, to try to comfort someone's theological point, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, there's a couple of ways to understand it, but that's it. Like, I have no problem with the concept of having something that you own that you want to protect. If someone else is mishandling something that is yours, particularly if it's your name and your reputation, if someone is
misappropriating, mishandling,
then you're going to want to protect that. And it seems like what is being said is that Pinchas somehow achieved that. He wanted to protect the integrity of God and God's people, and against idolatry and whatever it might be. And God looks at Pinchas and goes, "Okay, I like the way you've done that with the javelin. You've impaled him. That's what I wanted in the first place. You, at least you, can have my covenant of peace, and you can be number 3 in glory, I suppose." Yeah. All right. Now,
and he gets an everlasting priesthood.
Well, he gets and it's not just that, Ross. It's like it's in verse 13, and it shall be unto him and unto his seed after him. So this is perpetual nepotism. Here we go. That the covenant of an everlasting priesthood, because he was jealous for his God, and made atonement for the children of Israel.
Which is a whole nother question. I mean, did the act of him slaying all of those, or slaying the Midianitish woman, and is that the prince of the father's house among the Simeonites, Zimri, the son of Salu, is that what brought about the atonement for the children of Israel in the holy place?
I don't know. I guess so. This reminds me a little bit of when, as we just read recently, was it in Yachad, when Aaron runs out with his censer and into the midst and stops the plague, and was it another 24,000 that died in that one as well? I don't know.
I had to look. I can't remember.
Yeah, it might be the same amount of people, but it was a lot of people anyway. And he made atonement. But here, 24,000 die in this plague, and perhaps it is stopped by Pinchas going and thrusting a spear through both of these ones, and therefore, in that sense, makes atonement for the children of Israel. But it is what do you make of it, Ross? Because it's a covenant of peace and a covenant of an everlasting priesthood. So therefore, everyone after his seed, through the line of Pinchas, is the what are your thoughts?
Well, the only thing that I'm thinking is we need to do a series on Levites and priests and really just take this apart, because we've talked about it before. There's so many details that have to be unpacked, not only between Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, and the differentiation between the sons of Aaron and the Levitical groups, that then when you get to Deuteronomy knows nothing about it. And that's not even to say, and I'm on a tangent here, but I'll stop in a moment. I'll stop as quickly as the plague stopped in just a minute. But what do you do when you get to the 2 divisions of the priesthood, Abiathar and Zadok? Where does that come from? How does that come in? And how do we trace that back to the Pentateuch? Yep. Anyway, the everlasting priesthood, that is an interesting idea that's introduced to us here, and I think that we're going to have to dig into the whole. You can't just take this piece, right? You got to dig it all out.
That's right. But I'm sure the short of it, if we had to put it in a nutshell, there are competing priesthoods, and this is an assertion of one over the other. So that's the claim here.
That's right.
Again, so we have Zimri, son of Salu, the prince of his father's house among the Simeonites. Okay, so he's a chief leader, if you like. So he ticks that box. But not only that, but the Midianitish woman that was slain was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur, and he, the father of this woman who was killed by Pinchas, was a head of the people of his father's house in Midian. So perhaps the rank, if you like, of these two was sufficient to atone for the people and turn the plague away. Verse 16. Good heavens.
Man. Hey, 16 through 19. By the way, just so people notice, there is going to be a difference in the Hebrew and the English verses here at the end of this pericope, but it's okay if you got the Torah tablet. So we're going to go from 16 to 19, and this is about vexing, a charge to vex, or what's the other, harass?
Vex and smite, or harass, All
right.
So in the Torah tablet, the Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, vex the Midianites and smite them, for they vex you with their wiles, wherewith they have beguiled you in the matter. Beguiled's good. I think that's a good word.
That. I love beguiled.
Beguiled, and in the matter of Peor. Now it's the matter of Peor. In and in the matter of Cosby, the daughter of the prince of Midian, their sister, who was slain on the day of the plague. On the day of the plague, it's like this is a different day, it would appear, in the matter of Peor, and it came to pass after the plague, ...
Yeah.
And that's where we have to jump over to chapter 31, which we're not going to do now. It's like a commercial break.
That's right. It really is. And like I said, it's even more obvious in the Hebrew. Let me jump in and just bring Ezra into our conversation. He's been sitting there listening to all this. I'm curious at this point, because I'm a little bit surprised. I think we all are. You know, we've got all of these interesting good points about the Midianites, and then all of a sudden we have this really bad point. So I want, Ezra, can you maybe help us sort this out from an academic standpoint? Why is it that we see Midian involved even in Joseph being brought, well, it depends on which version, but Joseph being brought to the land of Egypt, which turns into Israel being in Egypt, and a Midianite involvement when Moses flees Pharaoh, he goes to the land of Midian. All of these things, Moses even marries a Midianite girl, and then we're going to have a harass the Midianites, kill them all kind of thing. All right, Ezra, help me out.
Great observation, and one that scholars have wrestled with for a long time. The Pentateuch doesn't offer a single unified view of the Midianites because, academically speaking, it wasn't written all at once. From a documentary hypothesis lens, these contradictions reflect different source traditions, written in different historical contexts, with different theological or political aims. Early in Exodus, Midian is a place of refuge. Moses marries Zipporah, daughter of a Midianite priest, often called Jethro, though sometimes Roel or Hobab, which tells you we're dealing with composite traditions. In these earlier texts, likely from the Elohist or older traditions, the Midianites are kinfolk, even spiritual allies. Jethro, after all, offers Moses judicial advice before Sinai, which is huge in terms of narrative authority. But by the time we get to Numbers, especially in Pinchas and Matot, Midian becomes the villain. They seduce Israel into idolatry, and suddenly we get divine orders for total war. That's most clearly tied to the priestly source, probably composed or redacted during or after the Babylonian exile, when purity and boundary making were high stakes. Midian becomes a theological other. So why the shift? Likely because Midian wasn't a monolithic group. Historically, it was a confederation of semi-nomadic tribes, some of whom may have been friendly to early Israelite tribes and others hostile. These layers get folded into the Torah, reflecting centuries of evolving relationships, some cooperative, others combative. So in short, it's not a contradiction, it's a tapestry. Different hands, different times, different Midianites.
Yeah, I can buy that.
And I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing. We see, and I'll get into this more as we get into the story, but when you see people talk about the land of Midian, people try to put a point on a map. We see the Midianites all over the place, and one of the big places we see them over and over is in the country of Moab, in the territory of Moab. So who are they? Well, they're these confederates of tribes. In fact, we're going to see over and over the 5 Midianite kings. Well, what does that mean? Do they have 5 kings in this one place? No, we're talking about like tribal leaders, like chieftains. Anyway, fascinating story.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to get that out on the table right now as we get into this.
And I think Ezra did a good job of that. I think I would agree with that. But I will just, at this point here, just read again, remind everybody where it is mentioned in the Moses scroll, because there is a little bit of overlapping just here between 16 and 19.
Yeah.
And what we find ourselves
Go ahead.
in DB7.
Okay.
I'll start from DB6. And we turned and we set forward towards the Negev, and we dwelt in front of Beit Peor. And at that time, the daughters of Moab and the women of Midian, or the wives of Midian, came to meet you, and they called to you to eat of their sacrifices. You ate of their sacrifices, you drank from their libations, you bowed their gods, and you whored with the Midianite women, and you were joined to Baal Peor. And that day, and the anger of Elohim burnt against you. He plagued a plague at you at that time, a great plague. And again, that concurs with Psalm 106. And I sent, and this is where we are, and I sent men from you to battle the Midianites, and you smote them with the edge of the sword, and you captured from them many captives, and the plague was restrained. And then the question becomes, What does it mean you captured from the many captives, or did you return from the many captives? And there's a couple of ways to understand that. But where it breaks off here in verse 19, it picks up in chapter 31, and it makes a decision on what that means, and then it deals with that decision or that interpretation in the most horrific way, Ross.
Yeah.
But we don't have time to get into that. Again, you're going to have to wait for it because it appears.
Wait, let me at least jump in and confirm what you just said, because just because we want to tie this text to what we see in the Moses scroll. So it says there's going to be, there's this plague, etc., and then we've just proposed that it breaks off after it mentions this, that after the plague we lost 24,000. Here's a footnote from the Jewish Study Bible here at verse 19. It says, God's command that Israel take vengeance on the Midianites for their part in the apostasy of Baal Peor is realized in the continuation of this account in chapter 31, where verse 1 completes the verse fragment of 25:19. So here's the deal. It says there's this plague, and then it's an example of, we pause here for a commercial break. Now we're going to take a census of the children of Israel in chapter 26. And if we work through, we're going to see this big, big census. And we're going to talk about the census in a moment. Then we get to chapter 27, and we've got the story of the daughters of Zelophehad, and then et cetera, et cetera. And then 28 and 29 talk about sacrifices. And then all the way over in chapter 31, it goes, anyway, as I was saying.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean,
it's
right. That obvious.
It does seem really obvious, and yet Alter does something different with it. I don't know if you noticed, but what Alter does, he says verse 19a clearly doesn't belong here. It belongs. It doesn't belong with what. I mean, he agrees that it doesn't belong with what comes after it. But what he says is that it should be the ending of verse 18. So what he's suggesting is that it should say, I guess, for they vexed you with their wiles wherein they have beguiled you in the matter of, or in the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of Prince of Midian, their sister, who was slain on the day of the plague in the matter of Peor, and it happened, and this happened after the plague was over. Full stop. That's the way he wants to interpret it, which maybe you could do. I mean, I guess that is a possibility if Alter's suggesting that. But nevertheless, it does break off from the narrative here, and it does pick up in chapter 31.
That's right.
And that's also a fact. So there you go.
By the way, I won't read it because it basically says the same thing. But if you're in the Jewish Study Bible, for instance, if you go to chapter 31, it says, and here we are picking up right where 25:19 left off. It just wants to somehow literally connect. There was a plague. They're supposed to go sick them, go get the Midianites, and 31 is going and getting the Midianites. So they go together clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Chapter 26, another census. Got to have one of those. A couple of interesting things about this one. I'm going to jump to verse 10 unless you want to pick something up before there.
Nope, I'm good. You go where you need to go. I've got something later, but not this early.
All right, so this is this is very much a minor thing, but again, the last couple of weeks I've been quoting from the Dead Sea Scroll, 4Q27 Numbers, and in verse 10, there's just a small addition. The canonical text says, "And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them." It has the earth opened its mouth and the earth swallowed them. I guess we figured that's the case. We're talking about the Korahites. Swallowed them up together with Korah when that company died. At that time, the fire devoured 250 men, is what it has in the canonical text. And 4Q27 Numbers adds, who offered incense, and they became a sign, or they became a... and it seems to be just... And the reason why I bring that up is because it seems to be tying to their sin, or the reason why the earth opened them up and swallowed them is because they offered incense, which is reminiscent of Nadab and Abihu. And in fact, when we get a little bit further down to 2661, it reminds us, because we've had a number of reasons why they were consumed. Nadab and Abihu once again died because of because they offered strange fire. They offered and that's what happened to them. All right. So, and then it confirms in 26:11, the sons of Korah did not die, Ross.
That's right.
Didn't die.
Well, they can't die because later they become a band, a praise and worship team. The sons of Korah.
Right. Hey, I didn't tell you this. I don't know if I told you this, but I spend most of my time in the library. I'm very lucky to be very close to a very large theological library, and every now and then I have a library buddy, Alistair, Detective McEwen. And as it turns out, he reminded me just the other day that Jacob McCoby, if I remember correctly, was the lead singer and founder of the band of the Sons of Korah, Australian band, he lives here in Geelong. Goes to
I
local...
love those guys. Get his autograph, man. I do. I really do. I love their music.
And he was a student of Alistair's. Apparently, Alistair taught him for a time.
Can he hook you up and you could get a signed photo for me or something?
Maybe I'm going to get a signed photo. I used to have all the albums. Loved this. I even went and saw them live, and just great musicians. Really, really good. Like it.
We're going to put a link. Wait, we're going to put a link to the Sons of Korah, the band. I'm going to put that in the description because it really is good music, and whatever a person thinks theologically. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something funny, though. What is the Psalm?
Psalm 51.
Yes.
I've heard about this. Yeah.
And did I tell you about this?
There was maybe an addition, maybe a priestly insertion that they did.
Little priestly insertion at the end, because at the end of the chapter, because it's such a beautiful, and it's a great song, and at the end, there's this little priestly insertion that they don't know what to do with, because it's like then, from a Christian perspective, they are a Christian band, sacrifices aren't supposed to be reinstalled. Ross, what's going on? That's not right. But so they sort of whisper that bit at the end. But of course, go ahead.
I was going to say, praise God for the sons of Korah, because what they should have done, because they believe strongly in the inerrancy, they had to leave it in. They could have taken a pen and marked it out, because that is an addition. Clearly an interpolation. So maybe now a former Ross would have been very critical of him. Oh, look, they're denying the sacrifice thing.
I was, now
that's right. So I'm going to go listen to that again, because I love the fact that they whispered it, because it's indicative that it was another voice.
That's another voice.
That's right.
That's great.
That's right. Hey, man, that's great. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Something cool about this, another cool thing about this this census, which is interesting and overlaps with our Moses scroll, interestingly enough, is when we come to, naming the tribes, as I've mentioned before, there's two competing lists of 12. One includes Joseph and Levi. The other includes Manasseh and Ephraim, right? So we have in the Moses scroll, of course, Manasseh and Ephraim. And the way that they try to deal with that quite often is to include Manasseh and Ephraim in what we call a Josephic envelope. So it starts with, of the tribe of Joseph, and then continues of the tribe of Ephraim, and then blah, 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 and then of the tribe of Manasseh. Okay, so this is what we get here in chapter 26. It begins with verse 28. We have that of the tribe of Joseph, and it even closes that envelope in verse 37b. It closes it. But the interesting thing is that I think for the first time in all of the lists that we have, Manasseh is mentioned first, then Ephraim, and then Benjamin, as they are listed in the Moses scroll. And the Moses scroll seems to imply, or at least according to my theory, in the way that they're divided between Abal and Gerizim, that these three are, in fact, in that order, children of the fourth wife of Jacob, or fourth wife of Israel. We understand her to be Rachel. So curious that it appears this way here. And that reference in the Moses Scrolls, GC 11. All right, what do you got?
Well, genealogies, and censuses. But I did find something. This is just a bit of trivia. I didn't notice this, and it's not, I don't want to get everybody worked up like this is a great theological thing, but let's say you get a phone call And you get a chance to win a lot of money if you can answer this. Who is the woman who is a daughter that's listed in a genealogy here? And look at verse 46 of Numbers 26. The name of the daughter of Asher was Sarah. Sarah. You think, well, what's the big deal? But look, Sarah, whoever she is mentioned in a couple of places. I just want to go through these because it must be that she was something important, somebody important. She keeps showing up. Okay, look at Genesis 46, all the way back in Genesis 46, verse 17. Here we go. The children of Asher, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, and their sister Sarah. Serah. One more. And again, maybe some of the listeners, there's probably some big rabbinic teaching on who this Sarah is. Look at verse 30 of 1 Chronicles 7. The sons of Asher, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, and their sister Sarah. I told Seth today when I found this in the notes, because I get to talk to somebody and he's here. I said, I just imagine that they're writing this list and they're like, okay, what are the sons of Asher? And they go through and then Sarah is in the room and she goes, and their sister Sarah.
Yep.
Like, you got to put me in because she's there every time. A lot of these lists, like even with Miriam, in genealogical list where it talks about, that where it's tracing the genealogy, it talks sometimes about Moses and sometimes Aaron, sometimes Miriam is left out. But I tell you what, whoever Sarai is, she is never left out. There you have it.
And it is curious, isn't it? Because I remember we talked about this when we were at Genesis 46. The inclusion of a couple of women in the genealogy there kind of suggests, because they're trying to make up the number 70 is what they're trying to do. And then there's this discrepancy between that and Exodus chapter 1, if I remember correctly. But it makes it sound like they were practicing female infanticide because there's so many males, and yet there's a couple of females, and we understand that that's all that they had in all of the 70. So
well,
clearly,
I've always heard that, it just wasn't that common for women to be listed in genealogies. And I think that answer is because we have genealogies that don't have women, or at least an infrequent.
Well, it's a patrilineal society, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so it's odd to have, but interesting to your point that she's mentioned on multiple occasions.
Yep. 601,730. That's the number on this census.
That's it. Now,
what does that mean to you?
Well, while you're looking at that, I'm just going back and I'm looking for the reference. Maybe you can find it where, because I thought it was in Yachad, where there is where Aaron rushes out with his censer and achieves atonement on everyone's behalf.
I don't know.
In the middle of the, the incident that I'm talking about. And I'm just trying to remember how many of them died, and is it the same amount? Why can't I find this?
I don't know. But while you're looking for that, I will say that this is an interesting number. It's in verse 51 of chapter 26. These are they that were numbered of the children of Israel, 600,000, 1,730. So I just find it interesting because remember the number that we've learned of the first census was 603,550. What we learn in this particular Torah portion is that whole generation that left Egypt, according to the Masoretic text, right? Am I saying this right?
Yeah, that's what
that whole generation is dead. What verse is that? 63?
Well, now, but 26 verse 64 and 65, it wants us to believe that it's the whole generation. So this is the question, Ross. So there is a narrative that wants us to to believe that it's the whole generation, that a whole generation passed because of the sin at Kadesh Barnea. Then there is the narrative, and I think maybe this is in Deuteronomy, that all the men of war had to pass. That was the decree. And then in the Moses scroll, we're to understand that the men of the rebellion, only the men of the rebellion at Kadesh Barnea, and they died at Kadesh Barnea before they moved on.
Right.
So if I'm following you correctly, we were originally given a total of 603,550 in chapter 1, verse 46, but now we have 601,730, and that is a difference of what, 1,800-ish?
Yeah, but remember now, that means it's a difference of that, but the delta, I guess is the way you would say it, because you've had to have 603,548 or 47 die, because you would exclude Joshua, Caleb, and Moses isn't quite dead. But everyone else has died.
Everyone's
of
dead.
The men, and now you lost 603,547, but you've gained 601,730. You see what I'm saying?
So these are all the children. These are all the young ones that have not been counted 20 up. Okay, all right, but then and then we have to take into consideration also.
I hate math.
I haven't done the math, and I'm not going to do it right now. But I just found that verse. It's Numbers 17, verse 14. Those who died of the plague came to 14,700, aside from those who died on account of Korah. Now, I can't remember how many died on the account of Korah, but 250 men or whatever it was. And then here, Ross, we just learned just a few verses ago that 24,000 died in another plague. So what are we up to? Almost 40,000 people are dead. And yet this is the number that they come up with in the census. All right.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's still a lot of people.
A lot of people. A lot of people. All right, look, that's the census. Let's move on from there.
Okay, please.
Let me see. What do we got?
The daughters of Zelophehad. Now, let me just say this. It's funny, and I'm not picking on our buddy Ezra, but Ezra says Pinchas instead of Pinchas, but is flawless in Zelophehad. So,
well done.
Yeah, good job.
Good job,
we
Ezra.
have to give credit where credit is due.
The credit's due, yeah. And again, this comes down to patrilineal inheritance versus matrilineal. What are you going to do? In this case, their father had no sons. Does that mean that it goes to an uncle, one of his brothers, the oldest brother or whatever? How does this work? And what if he has no brothers? I mean, do we just, are we homeless now? What, we don't inherit anything? And the decree is, you can have some land. But the insinuation is that you have to marry within your tribe so that the land stays within the tribe. Oh, okay, all right. So, and I think they're from Benjamin. Is that right? Where are they from?
I don't even remember. Daughters of Zelophehad, 27. Let's look. Chapter 27.
Son of Manasseh, son of Joseph. Oh.
Okay,
the
look at
Manashites,
there.
is that
you
right?
go.
Oh, that's wrong. Okay. There you go. But yeah, they've got to marry within their tribe.
Yeah.
All right, that's nice for them. And that kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. What have I got here? Oh, we do have another. Now, while we're in chapter 27, I just have to tell you this.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to have some more to add to this, Ross.
Okay, I'm ready.
This is 27:23. Because 4Q27 Numbers actually has a significant addition, which I thought was worth highlighting, our Dead Sea Scroll. And from verse 23, it begins the same way. It says, he laid his hands. So what happens is God tells Moses, don't forget, you're going to die. You're not going over there. You did a bad thing. You and Aaron. Aaron's already dead. You're going to join him. Tough luck. It's just the way it is. Stop it. And Moses says, well, who is going to shepherd the people?
Right.
And God says, hey, Joshua, that'll do. Go and lay hands on him, do the magical thing. So
I have to grab something off my shelf. I'm listening. Keep going.
You go and grab a shelf. I'm just going to read this. So the canonical text and our Dead Sea Scroll concur at the beginning. It says, he laid his hands on him and commissioned him as Jehovah spoke by Moses. But then 4Q27 Numbers adds, and Moses said to him, your eyes have seen what Jehovah did to these two kings, so he will do to all the kingdoms into where you are going. You shall not fear them, for Jehovah your God, he is the one who fights for you. Now, everyone listening to that will say, yeah, but that sounds familiar. That sounds biblical. And you're quite right, because we have this in the Samaritan Pentateuch and we have it in Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 21 to 22. But those verses, I think, are very reminiscent of what we have in the Moses Scroll. And that is a combination of two references in the Moses Scroll. GA 2-5, it says, hear, O Israel, you're crossing the Jordan today to enter, to possess strong and mighty nations, big and fortified cities with walls. Do not say in your heart, these are many nations that we're unable to dispossess them. Don't be afraid of them. Remember what Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt in this case. So will Elohim do to all your enemies, because Elohim is crossing before you. He is a consuming fire. He will destroy them. He will consume them quickly from before you. And then in right at the end of the Moses Scroll, Ross, in HB 4-8, it says, Joshua, who stands before you, he will cross the Jordan, and he will go with you into that good land that you are to enter there to possess it. Be strong, be courageous. Do not fear. Do not be dismayed, because Elohim, your Elohim, he will go before you. And then the rest of H, unfortunately, we cannot read. It might actually say a little bit of this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Let's right at the end.
First of all, I'm going to show this coming Saturday how very close we are to the end. You know, one of the things that has, I think, benefited my studies more than anything is doing what you just did there, where you're looking at text in, say, in this case, Numbers chapter 27, and you're pulling together horizontally what text in Deuteronomy, what text in other books of the Pentateuch are we looking at contextually. Let me read you a footnote. The reason I got up and grabbed something off my shelf there, this is the commentary on the Torah by Richard Elliott Friedman. Here's what he says about 27 verse 15. Moses spoke to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. This is the last time that Moses is quoted as saying anything to God. In Deuteronomy, Moses will report to the people his past conversations with God, but these are the last words of Moses to God in the Torah. And his last concern is the people, that they should have a leader. Now, I'm only going to read that portion of this because what I want to suggest is that this marks the end of the Torah story in a way that most people never really notice. And that is exactly what I'm going to talk about this coming Saturday. I'm going to prove from the text of the Torah that this is it. Now, what does that mean, Jono? It means that we would expect that what follows might not be within the body of the original Torah, such as, what do we have in chapters 28 and 29? Do you have notes on those?
It is just more rams and lambs and libations and oil and flour and all of this.
28 and 20. And by the way, I think you and I probably, because we do end up with some of the same things pointed out in our notes. What did you notice anything about God's food and
there is something funny about that. Yeah. So 28 verses 1 and 2, the way that it comes, okay, so God is saying to Moses, hey, this my food, my offerings, my fire, my pleasing odor to me.
Typical.
And again, it's the way that the priestly writer, well, is this the priestly writer? I think that Richard Elliott Friedman and Baden both agree that this is both chapters 28 and 29.
I saw that.
Is the redactor.
They both call it the redactor. Yeah, but either way, either way,
It's priestly material being rehashed.
They're saying that it's late. It's later insertion, which goes back to our point. If you look at 25, verse 19, which has then several parts that are kind of added in between that and chapter 31, the execution of go get the Midianites, it makes sense that this is a later insertion, at least in terms of what the scholars have noted.
But it is, again, the way that God is imagined by the writer as someone who, I mean, look, I can relate to this. I think one of the, imagine walking into a room and you can smell a roast lamb. Oh my goodness, with garlic and rosemary, just nothing better. And freshly baked bread, over a fire. Some of that smoke, the eucalyptus. You don't have the eucalyptus, but
I've smelled eucalyptus. By the way, if you went into the tabernacle, that the only thing you should smell is bread. So all of our vegetarian friends would give a thumbs up to that. You wouldn't smell all this barbecue. Hey, look, let me read one.
This stuff, the only thing that's missing on this list is the smell of coffee. I think also that would just make it. Oh,
man. Mm-hmm.
All of those, walking into a room with that, and you're just like, yeah, I am in the right place. So I can understand. But this is the way that the writer wants to imagine God, that he's actually smelling these odors, and it pacifies him. This is what we learn from so many of the texts. Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the note in the Jewish Study Bible at 28:1 says, chapters 28 and 29 are an insertion into the narrative consisting of ritual prescriptions that delineate the daily, Sabbath, new moon, and festival schedule of offerings. And it goes on to describe, quite a bit. The Numbers calendar, reading down further, expands on the calendar in Leviticus chapter 23, also a product of the priestly tradition, by adding daily and new moon rituals, and it goes on and it describes all the distinctions to be made between what we've encountered previous to these, chapter 28 and 29, other sacrificial lists that we've seen elsewhere. It's just it's really an interesting.
That's curious, and I'll tell you why. Because so if I'm to understand you from the notes here, the new moon rituals are added here in a way that is not represented in Leviticus 23.
You got it.
And we have verses, do we not, where God says, not interested in your new moon rituals,
I despise your new moons and your Sabbaths. It's like a lot of these things. That's Isaiah chapter 1, for instance. And a lot of people would say, well, that's not talking about what you think it's talking about, Ross, because notice it says Sabbath. Well, there is a Sabbath that God is concerned with, but it seems that became heavily interpolated, these festival lists. And again, especially after this Saturday's class, people are going to see that once you get to chapter 27, towards the end of the chapter, it becomes really obvious that 28, 29, 30, these chapters appear after the story is basically done.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to your Saturday class. Just a reminder to everyone, we are rapidly approaching the end of Numbers. If you don't have this one already, now's the time to get that. This is the Deuteronomy Torah tablet is available now. Link in the description below, and you will receive it in time. But that's right. So next week it's going to be Matot. Is there anything else that we wanted to throw into the mix?
I tell you, I think we've about covered it all. I tell you what we would like, though. We do appreciate the comments, and so I want to encourage people to leave comments, and maybe we'll tear into those. Now, the other thing about next week, if I'm not mistaken, next week we have 2 Torah portions together, Matot and Maseh.
And Maseh, well, I'm glad you reminded me of that. Okay, well, that means, does that take us to the end? How many chapters do we have here?
That's it.
Is that it? Are we finishing Numbers? Are you telling me we're finishing Numbers next week?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oi, all right. So everyone, order your Deuteronomy Torah tablet if you have not already. And like I said, link in the description. And a couple of weeks ago, me Deuteronomy double coming to you this time next week. And until then, Ezra, take us on out.
All right, friends, that wraps up our deep dive into Parashat Pinchas, where zealotry, census data, daughters demanding justice, and liturgical scheduling all somehow share a stage. If you've enjoyed this Torah Pearl, go ahead and like the video, share it with a fellow Bible nerd, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep your scrolls open and your questions sharp. Shalom.